This is how I believe the tariff situation could play out. My name is Simon Beard. I build Culture Kings from a little market store to a $600 million brand. I love helping other founders on the journey. So I had some time over the weekend to think about it, do a bit of research. And I do think we have to take in the change in the market conditions that are happening right now. So important in business that when you're making a decision, you're not like over here where you don't worry, everything's going to be great, everything's to the moon. And you're not over here where you're too pessimistic, where everything's fucked, there's no opportunity, everything's broken, but you're seeing it how it is. These tariff changes, specifically to the e-commerce fashion industry, are probably the biggest spanner in the works that we would have ever faced in our careers. And people go, oh, what about COVID? This, I believe, will be a lot bigger than COVID. In COVID was the boom time of all e-commerce. I remember because I was in that ad account every day seeing it. We'd always grow in Culture Kings between 20 and 60% for 12 straight years at this point. But then suddenly I'm seeing 120%, 140% up year on year. And this isn't off a small number. This is off over $100 million a year base. And as much as I wanted to take credit for it, part of me was screaming, this is a perfect storm of things going right. We had so much money pumped into the economy. We had physical stores shut so that people could shop online. People were spending so much more time on their devices because they were stuck at home that there was so much more inventory for ads. So the CPMs dropped and they were just shopping so much because that was their dopamine hit, was the packages turning up at the door. When you see every metric go up, like average order value, conversion, CPMs dropping, it's a perfect storm and just dropping massive sales growth and profitability to the bottom line. What we could be facing now is actually the antithesis of that point. It's the perfect storm of things going bad, especially in the e-commerce world. So a lot of Australian e-commerce businesses, say they're doing around 10 million, probably have 20% of their revenue coming from the US, where you just basically turn on your ads there and ship there. And if the market is just so big, you get these like little pockets of products of your catalog that just convert. The $800 threshold getting removed on duties and tariffs, every one of those packages will now get stopped and have to pay a minimum of $25 from May and then a minimum of $50 duty from June 1 per package. So say for your average fashion brand that say had $150 average order value, that package is going to get stopped, held up. They're going to have to pay the customs unless you do the Shopify integration at the cart, which is DDP. They're going to have to do it, which will just be the worst experience. It will delay the shipment. So that is going to have a massive impact simply shipping from Australia into America. And people go, no, it's only 10% duty. No, it's on country of origin. That would only be the case if the product was made here. But the vast majority of our fashion brands or e-commerce retail that are selling into America from Australia are not made here. Okay, so this could play out in a few ways. As a lot of brands will need to replace that sudden loss of 20% of their revenue, they're going to try and force those sales into the Australian market. But not only other Australian brands, rest of the world that was all reliant on the greatest consumer in the world, the American that was buying so much stuff, is going to look for other markets to help deal with excess inventory and create sales to be able to comp for the decline they're going to face in the US. The problem is there's no other markets like the US. Every time I look at it, it's blown my mind. When you see the conversion, the average order value for like dollars, the Americans just buy so much damn product. But think about it. We all know in our business, when you just push up the price of something, like I remember in the t-shirt game at Culture Kings, when you went from a $49.95 t-shirt in Australia to $59, you just see the demand come off a cliff. And you could understand it was so price sensitive and you were always struggling with brands that they always wanted to keep pushing it up. But you had to be so careful to present the value because there was just so much more volume at that $50 price point. Now think in the US, how much that demand will be affected. Everything will go up by 30%. And I just think the consumer will have to be more hesitant and not buy as much stuff as they were before. This is going to have such a ripple effect as everyone who's making all this inventory and is relying on that customer is going to try and comp these sales elsewhere, look into other countries just like Australia and try and pump more sales volume. But our customer will still be affected and our economy will be affected because we've all got businesses interrelated to that US drawdown, which just like the e-commerce company that was doing $10 million with $2 million shipped to Australia, might have to reduce their staff and reduce their operating expenses because they've just lost 20% of their revenue overnight. What I'm talking about is that perfect storm, the opposite of what COVID, where the average order value, the conversion, the CPMs drops, the ad inventory gets more expensive because more people are pushing and fighting for those sales. Okay, but I don't want to be all doom and gloom. So where's the opportunity? Is that in this down market, talent that you couldn't get before will become available. Look up my video on how the corporate pyramid's getting replaced, I believe, with what is a value chain circle, and that you can rebuild and restructure teams to be so much leaner and more efficient. You can use this time to more narrow and focus in on a niche customer and over deliver, create the raving fan that they will create content for you that will become your best performing content in ads, because we all know the authentic content works, but nothing works better than actually a real customer and creating that amazing flywheel. If you do want to take on the US though, this is where you can't test or dabble the decision anymore. You have to commit fully and order your stock in on the ground there, drive it in through a 3PL, so you're only paying duty on the wholesale, but you have to understand you're going into a choppy market. That with all this price rises on the horizon, you would think there has to be more of a consumer impact to the US that I think through that whole COVID period, we haven't seen them affected like the rest of the world that we soon will see. But this is a great time to step back and see how can you strip out the unnecessary costs and expenses in your business. You have to be ruthless. You have to cut hard. And you can see how Elon does it. And as much as everyone rip him and stuff for that, he's the greatest entrepreneur of our time. And you have to make the hard decisions as an entrepreneur. And through this period, I believe survival in itself can be a win because of the opportunities that it will create through the other side. Will swing right back to that COVID time because of their less competition, the amazing talent on the market, and the ability to restructure, repivot, and make your business built for this new AI first age.